Probably about 30 seconds. All right, and three, two, and go.
Well, we first of all want to lift up the family of Tyre Nichols, knowing that there were homegoing services on tonight and or on this afternoon in which the family had to bury a loved one that had experienced death, unfortunately, at the hands of law enforcement. So we want to lift up that family on tonight. And then also, we've got a guest that's going to join us tonight, and we're going to be talking about your property taxes. And as we do that, we want to just keep in mind that they will be coming due here very soon. And there are some changes that you may want to be aware of. And we've got a guest that's going to join us tonight, Representative Cherish Pryor. Indiana State Rep is going to join us and share some information in regards to your property taxes. Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus, Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we pray for the family of Brother Nichols. Lord, we pray, Lord, as they had their homegoing service on today, Lord, that you are giving them comfort and peace. And Lord, we pray that across this nation, Lord, as others, oh Father God, Lord, are asking questions, Lord, and Lord, are seeking that your hand will be upon this situation and others, Lord, that you will do just that. And as we discuss that in other topics, Lord, that you will lead, guide, and direct. And we give you all the honor, glory, and praise. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and I'm glad to have with me on this evening. We have Indiana State Representative Cherish Pryor. She's going to join us in our conversation. And if you are listening via Radio 1, you can call in to the radio station, and that number is 317-239-1310 if you have a question or a comment. And if you are on our Facebook feed, you can also comment there in the feed if you have a question in regards to what we're going to be discussing on tonight or a comment. You can do that as well in our Facebook feed. Good evening, Representative Pryor. How are you?
All right, and yourself?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful, doing wonderful. Now, Representative Pryor, property taxes is something that over the past, really, I'll say since it's been several mayors ago, which it's really come to the forefront, I'll say, in which you were looking at those, I'll say, every legislative session. And we're seeing that there's changes in property taxes, how they may affect the public school systems and other things in regards to property taxes. As we're seeing growth, we're seeing communities that are popping up all over the place. We're seeing a lot of things that are happening in housing, property taxes, and understanding your property tax bill as it can be changing is something that as we're looking at rising costs, and we're seeing a lot of increases just across the board, whether it be utilities. We're seeing the possibility or potential, most likely for most folks, that their property taxes will be seeing increases as well. So,
Yeah.
Representative Pryor, why don't you share with us from your perspective, I guess, where we are and what are some of the things that the community needs to really be concerned about in regards to their property tax bills that will be coming up in about 6 weeks or so?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on the show. Um, and you are correct. Property taxes pay for a lot of things. It pays for the schools, pays for your local government, police, fire department. Um, it pays for a lot of things. So it's really important. Um, and and with property taxes being so critical, we want to make sure that base is maintained so that those services can be provided. However, when you live in communities that are experiencing significant growth, redevelopment or development in your community, your and you live close nearby, your property taxes will increase. Additionally, several years ago when we were seeing all of the, or even last year, people paying premium prices, sometimes 20, 30, $70,000 over um, asking price, because your property tax bill is assessed by your county assessor. But that assessment is also based on the sales price in that area. And so, with this, it's having several years of the housing market being a seller's market, that has increased the assessed value. And the assessed value is what is the basis for your property taxes. And so several years ago, we passed the 123, which means that if you have a home and that is your homestead, you're paying 1%. If you have a second home or a home that's not considered your primary place of residence or doesn't have your homestead, then it's 2%. But what people are going to see when they get their property tax bill, sometime probably in April, they should expect an increase in their property taxes because assessments are going to have gone up, average around the county about 15%. There are people, for instance, my house went up about $40,000 from last year. So people, you're going to get a potential sticker shock. What also people need to know is that if you have a referendum, those referendums are also going to be taken into account as well. And so you'll be having that 1% based on the assessed value and then the referendum as well. So I just want people to be prepared when they get their tax bill, that you're going to be looking at a little bit more this year, and quite frankly, next year as well.
Now, when
So
you
it's
say,
going to continue to go up.
okay, so next year, because, and help, matter of fact, help remind me as well. Property
Okay.
taxes are 2 years behind, 1 year behind. What is it right now?
So it's 2 years.
It's
So
2 years.
the
Okay.
assessed value, so is the sales data, or I should say the sales data that the assessed value is based on is 2 years behind. So the sales data that we are looking at, right, the sales data is what your property tax bill this year is based on. However, your assessment is from last year. So this is the assessment from 2022, but you're paying it in 2023 because the assessors can't get all of that done in 1 year. So they do the assessment, in 2022, but the sales data is from 2021. So the sales happen 1 year, the assessment happens the next year, and then you pay your bill the following year. So that's why we say, 2022 sales taxes from 2022, but you're paying them in 2023.
And that's
And
why
so if you were,
you say that we should expect that over the next couple of years we'll see an
yeah,
increase. Uh,
yes.
and I'm not sure I heard. Do you have any type of percentages, or is it anything consistent that
Mm-hmm.
an average home owner can say? Here's what I at least can maybe plan for.
I would tell people to plan. The average across the state is 15%. So I would tell people to at least plan for 15%, 15% increase.
That's quite a bit, Representative Pryor.
It is quite a bit. And, my focus for years really had been, and I guess I saw this coming, but not to this magnitude and scale. For the areas where the longtime homeowners who have lived in areas around the state where people, we have folks moving in and the property taxes or the assessments are going up. You may have an older family that lived in their house for a long period of time. The assessment may have been the one lady, older lady, her assessment was $41,000 in 2019. In 2023, her assessment is going to be $179,000. So you're seeing those drastic increase in those older communities where people have lived for a long time. And now that people are moving in and now there's development in that area and people are building these new homes for $200,000 or $300,000, that's pushing the value up for those long-time homeowners. And that's going to make it very difficult for those folks to pay their property tax bill because they're seeing drastic increase. And not only are people seeing drastic increases in the property tax bill, you also have the increases with the utilities. Gas prices are going up with utilities. So everything is really going up for folks. And it's just making it really difficult, I think, for people. But I will say this, this is something I've worked on for years where I've tried to have a bill in the legislature that would help protect these long-term homeowners for the homestead people. I will say homestead. For those homeowners, I've tried to have something, but this year, the number has increased so drastically. I think, we may have something done this year to try to help homeowners.
All right, I want to put a pin in that and come back to that because I'm not sure I quite understand when you say
Okay.
the numbers have increased drastically,
Hmm.
exactly what that means. But we do have a caller on the line. Let's go ahead and bring our caller in. Do we have Larry?
How you doing, Reverend Alexander?
Hey,
Yeah,
Larry, hold on,
Hi,
Larry,
Larry.
Larry, 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 Larry. Hold on a second. Before I allow you to start, Larry, it's my understanding that you are a candidate for mayor. Is that true?
no, don't try that because this
Wait,
is a
Larry, hold
call-in
on, wait a minute. I'm
program,
asking a
and
question.
everybody got
Larry,
to have their
Larry,
cards on the
Larry,
table, and there's no
Larry,
mistakes there.
Larry, I'm asking a question. And the question simply is that true?
Well, it looks like you're off the hook, but I'll be able to
Larry,
straight up
Larry,
tell my no
Larry,
business.
Larry, you call in and you're
Yes,
allowed to
I am.
speak.
Yes.
Okay, so if you are a candidate for mayor, Larry, okay, here,
Okay, yeah, I go to routine. I
okay,
mean,
hold
you're
hold
never
on,
going to
Larry,
make any
Larry, let
progress
me finish
as
and be
long as you keep.
okay.
What am I going to be on?
Here's what we're going to do, Larry. All right. You have to. We will get with you, and you can get with us, and we can definitely discuss what your platform's going to be for mayor, what your ideas are, and you are welcome for that on the
Well,
Concerned Clergy
this is
radio
part of
show.
the
So
plan.
here's the deal, Larry. Here's the deal. For now, until we are able to get that established
I
and get that
understand.
done,
I
um,
understand, Reverend
I'm
Alexander.
sure
I'm
you
sorry.
understand, and I think you know we're going to
Sorry.
be fair.
I know.
And
I know.
all right. So we thank Larry for calling
Bye.
in.
I know. I
All
know.
right.
Bye bye.
All right. So just so our listening audience understands, because you may not be aware, Larry has announced his candidacy for mayor of Indianapolis. At this particular time, I'm not sure if he has declared as a Democrat or Republican. Representative Pryor, you may know that, but I don't know. But what?
I was not aware that he was running, so this is
Okay.
my first looking
Oh,
at
okay. So yes,
it.
so Mr. Vine, Larry Vine. A lot of folks just know him as Larry. He is a frequent caller on not just our show, but many of the other shows. As we are getting into campaign season, one of the things that we want to be cognizant of is allowing candidates to have equal time. That's one of the things that we are charged with, and we are asked as we are on the public airwaves, that we have to fill out forms, we have to do things in advance, we have to provide prior notice. So Larry, as you know, I began to share with that. He says he knows the routine. I'm not sure if he understands that a lot of this is conforming to FCC compliance and election as well. So those are the rules. We want to conform to them. It's nothing against him or any other candidate. As many of you know, a good friend of a lot of the clergy, Pastor James Jackson, he is declared as a mayor as well. And what you've seen is that he has, you're not seeing him on his weekly shows. You're not seeing him on a lot of the platforms that he was, especially when it comes to Radio 1. And that is the reason why. So hopefully that not only helps Mr. Vaughn, it also helps the listening audience understand why we do what we do. And that is pretty much the reason why we had to cut that short. But Representative Pryor, he has declared for mayor, and I do believe, as I think we have the end of this week for anyone else to declare. We may find that there are some other names that may come out of the woodworks and declare their candidacy as well.
Yeah, we may. There are a couple that's running. I have given my support to my fellow colleague, who I think will make a great mayor, Representative Robin Shackelford, who's fighting a good fight at the legislature with me. But I always say people have a right to run. So we'll see how that all shakes up out in May.
Well, it's going to be interesting. We still have before that Tuesday in May, in which we have to cast our ballots. I think you're going to see, like I said, a very interesting primary season. You're going to see, I think, by the end of this week, you'll probably see some other names that will introduce their names as candidates for the mayor of Indianapolis. And that'll, come with, I'll say, from different parties. It could be Democrat, Republican, or independent.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the property taxes are going to be due May 10th. And people will receive their property tax bills right around the time where the elections or primaries are really in full swing. So it'll be pretty interesting to see how people respond to the elections, and whether or not people will get more people to come out as well.
Well, and even will the candidates even speak to that issue, which is an important issue during the primary season, as you just
it's a critical issue. It's a critical issue. It's a huge issue. Housing is so important. I have my efforts and expertise. It has really been the property taxes. However, the other part of housing is people who are homeless, people who are getting evicted, even people who live in their homes, not being able to stay in their homes because they can't afford the property taxes on that they receive. And as I had originally started talking about and trying to help these folks that were having a difficult time, one of the things that people kept saying to me was, well, if you can get that much for your house, you should just sell your home. It was always going to sell your home. Well, people don't want to sell their homes and move somewhere else. People, particularly if they've been in neighborhoods for long periods of time and they work those neighborhoods and they fought to get businesses and redevelopment in their community, they're not wanting to leave. They want to enjoy all those amenities that they fought for in their community. And as we see right now, even if a person were to sell their home at a premium price, they may have a difficult time finding somewhere else to go. And if you paid off your home, why would you want to go and live somewhere where you're not paying another mortgage or you're paying somebody else's mortgage because you're renting?
And
So
a lot of folks, yeah, a lot of folks don't
that
understand
bother
that.
me when people say that. It bothered me when people say just sell your property. Sell your property, move somewhere else. But it's not like you can put that money in the bank and go live somewhere cheaper. You know, you're gonna
It,
have to use all that money to live somewhere else.
it's a huge hassle. What folks need to understand, when you're enticed. And I
Mm-hmm.
do want to touch on that as well. I know we've got callers holding. We do have to go ahead and take our break. So instead of trying to cram you in, we'll go ahead and get our callers after the break. So if
Okay.
you would like to be part of the conversation, you can do so by calling into the studio. And that number is 317 239 1310. 317 239 1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 92.7, and 95.1 FM, The Light.
All of the assessments for 2022, and these
Oh,
numbers jump quite a bit.
really? Okay. Well, hold on a second here.
Yeah.
All right.
I, I mean, I can't say that on there, but
Yeah, right. So hold on a second. Yeah. Welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. If you would like to contact the Concerned Clergy, you can do so by sending an email, and our email address is clergyindy@gmail.com. You can also phone the Concerned Clergy toll free 1-800-771-4061. I'm Reverend Tony Alexander, and I have with me on this evening, we have Indiana State Representative Cherish Pryor. She's been sharing some information in regards to property taxes on tonight, and she's also going to stay with us throughout the hour as later on we are going to be discussing the situation there in Memphis as well. But we're talking about property taxes right now. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, feel free to call in 317-239-1310. We do have a caller that is on the line. We have Mayhem. Good evening,
Hey, how
Mayhem.
you doing? Hey, I
hi.
don't know. How you doing? I don't know if you can answer this question or not. I know maybe 7 or 8 years ago, during Memphis and Fall Creek, when they was gentrifying, they was people was getting tax abatements. I don't know if they're getting it now, but it seems like every time when somebody gets pushed out of their homes, other people are coming in. I want to know, are they getting tax abatements? And we got people buying up a lot of houses, and I thought they changed that law when 2008 went down that they wasn't people were supposed to live in the house 5 years before they sell it. But people buying like 4 and 5 homes, living in one, and renting out the other ones. Are people getting tax abatements? I'm just trying
Okay.
to figure out.
So,
These houses
okay.
are these houses like 3-4 times the amount, and we know they're not worth that. And I take it up there.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so much for your phone call,
Okay.
man.
So let me. You may have to remind me of all your questions. So, for the tax abatements, so there was a program several years ago to develop a Fall Creek place, where I think those were 10-year abatements. I think all of those abatements are now off the book. So, um, generally, people are not getting abatements for housing. So I don't know that people are getting tax abatements for that. And I think what you're talking about for the 5 year is a program through the Indiana Housing Coalition, where people, if they were to get a loan and move into a house, they do have to stay in that house for 5 years. Um, or maybe even 10 years they have to stay in their house. And if they sell or move that house earlier, they had to repay some money, but they're not allowed to purchase additional homes through that particular program. That has to be their primary home. However, you do bring up another concern that a lot of people have, and I also have, is that we do have investors that are coming in purchasing properties. And if you have a home, you may be like me, where you have people calling you 2 or 3 times a week, or sometimes even every day, trying to get me to sell my home. So, there are a lot of investors out of town who are calling, trying to get people to sell their homes to them.
Now, let me
Another
ask.
problem that I'm hearing about, um, another problem that I'm hearing about, and I'll just say this one, Reverend Alexander, is people driving through communities and calling code enforcement on people as well. That is becoming the new thing. So, these investors wanting people's homes, people are not wanting to sell them, so they'll drive through and call code enforcement to try to get people on violations.
And I want to hit on that because while Mayhem talked about abatements, here is something that an investor does get. If there is a home that may have some outstanding health department or whatever violations, with the city on that property, if an investor comes in, they're able to, I think, move those violations at least down the road for a year or so. So they have, I believe, it's like 12 months, and they don't have to actually pay whatever the
The property
previous
owner.
owner had, yeah, whatever the previous property owner, whatever their back taxes were, whatever that lien amount was, whatever that is, they don't have to pay that. But here's something, Representative
So,
Pryor,
uh,
that I don't think a lot of folks know. When an investor comes in and buy a property, if you sell it to them, and let's say it's your property and it's running down or whatever, and you're wanting to move out, you sell it to them for $100,000. And if they get a loan for that property, let's say for another $100,000, when that sale gets recorded into the MyBor system, it's recorded as $200,000 instead of $100,000, which is what it was actually sold for. So while they're making these deals where they can get financing and things like that for improvements on the property, they're able to include that. And that also skews the property
mhm.
values in which you were talking about earlier this evening.
Yes, that would if whatever they record. is what that is going to whatever they record as a sale is going to affect the property tax base in the assessment. As far as the violations, if a person purchases a property, an investor or someone purchases a property in tax sale, that tax sale amount also includes any liens. What oftentimes happens though is whether it's I will say most of the time it's the investors, because a lot of low income individuals, they're trying to repair the problem, or they'll pay the fine. But what the investors will tend to do is they'll go to the city and appeal those lien amounts, and they'll fix the violations, and those violations could potentially come off if they purchase the homes. But what I do want to encourage people to do before I forget to say this is, when you get your property tax bill, and if it goes up significantly, or even if it goes up a little bit and you think it's too much, make sure you appeal your assessment. It's really important for people to appeal their assessment. Several years ago, we passed a law that said if your assessment goes up by more than 5%, so that means your tax bill goes up by more than 5% because your assessment goes. Now, I want to remind people, the referendum is outside of this. But if your assessment goes up by more than 5%, the onus is on the assessor to prove that the assessment is correct. So people, when you get your tax bill, look at that tax bill. If it's going up a lot, read through it and file an appeal.
Okay, repeat that statement. Days. Repeat, it's on who to prove it?
It's on the assessor. So the assessor is responsible for proving that their assessment is correct if it's 5%, if it increases by more than 5%.
Okay.
Now I will say this.
Now you've already stated that. But wait a minute. You already stated that the anticipation is that a lot of property taxes will be more than 5%.
A lot of them will. A lot of them will. But there is no guarantee that you're going to win, because remember, the assessment has to prove the assessment is correct. So if all the sales in that area has gone up by 15% or more, then those assessments are correct. But what you may be able to do is prove that, the assessments went up, but I didn't make any drastic investments in my home. I didn't make any drastic changes. I just maintained my home. I didn't have any addition to it. I didn't paint my home. I didn't add a fence or, so it's important for people to appeal those assessments if they go up, more than 5%, because it's going to be the
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
So if you're going to have a difficult time paying your bill, appeal your assessment. I just want people to know that is an option out there. I don't want people to think that they just have to pay or sell their home or ignore the tax bill and their taxes. The property end up in tax sale, and then you have to pay more money.
Now, are you able to share, like how to appeal? It's a yes or no, because we have to go to break. But I just want to know.
Okay, so if I can set the bill, I will say this: when you get your tax bill will should have on there about the assessment.
Okay,
all right. Appealing the assessment.
Okay, I want to repeat that when we come back. Let's go ahead and we got to take our break. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, if you have a question or comment for Representative Pryor, feel free to call in 317-239-1310. Once again, we're talking about property taxes right now. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, feel free to call in 317-239-1310, 317-239-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on AM 1310, 92.7 and 95.1 FM, The Light. Representative Pryor,
Uh-huh.
I lost your camera.
Oh, you can't see me?
Nope. I lost you right at the end there.
Can you
There
see
you
me
go.
now?
Yep.
Okay, I was typing in, trying to pull up this property tax bill, sample
Okay.
property tax bill. So
Okay.
I didn't think that it would lose my face,
All right. That's okay. Um,
but I'll
all
pull it
right.
up on my phone.
Okay. We'll talk about that on the other side then. All right. We'll go
Okay.
dark for a second. Welcome back to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show. I am Reverend Tony Alexander, and we've been chatting this evening with Indiana State Representative Cherish Pryor. She's been sharing with us some information in regards to property taxes, and we've got some callers that have been holding. We're going to go ahead and bring those callers in, but we're also glad to have joining us as well. We have the president of the Concerned Clergy, Pastor David W. Green Sr. He has popped in as well, so he's going to join the conversation as we move forward. And we're also going to be discussing on tonight what's going on in Memphis and the situation there as well. We do have a caller that has been holding throughout the break. Let's go ahead and bring in Anonymous. Anonymous, good evening.
Good evening, there, state legislator.
Hi.
You know, my feelings about property tax and knowing what I have observed over the course of my lifetime, and knowing that we have investors coming from the East Coast, the West Coast, not only from that, but from the Far East, from China, buying all this property. And as we see our borders and in New York City and all this homelessness and property taxes, you know, going up faster than the price of eggs. I really want to. I don't understand the purpose of a property tax because it's more like a gangster move. Back in the Al Capone days, you know how the mafia used to go into business and say, "Hey, you know, you pay us to stay here, to stay in business." People purchase homes for, like the elderly that bought their homes 20 years ago, as you just mentioned. And they might have paid 20 years, 50 years ago, $80,000 for the home. Now, you know, they build new homes in the neighborhood that force these people out. That is criminal to me. And my question to you is, and maybe you can carry it to the governor and the next governor to elect. When is the state of Indiana going to do away with property tax and this big surplus that they got down there, $5-6 billion? There's no reason It's no reason for elderly to be held hostage on property tax after they've been worked all their life. Let them live in their home in peace. And thank you for taking my call.
All right, thank you so much for your phone call. Representative Pryor?
So, several things. Thank you for the phone call. So, what do property taxes pay? Property taxes pay the a bulk of that is for schools. The other part of that is for a local government to function. So, we have to have a way for to pay for the services that we want and to educate our kids. And so, property taxes do help pay for that. And I'm just stating what it goes to pay for. The other thing, you do bring up a good point also about the older people. So what the state of Indiana does have in place is the over 65 deduction. The over 65 deduction does allow senior citizens to have a deduction off of their assessed value liability. We also have in place the over 65 circuit breaker. And what the over 65 circuit breaker does is it caps the increase of what a person over 65 has to pay from year to year. Now, you do have to qualify for the program based on your income and the assessed value of your house. So the people who are low income, people who are the most needy, will be the individuals that will qualify for that program. But there are some people in past years, there are some seniors who actually pay nothing because of the deduction is so great. They don't pay much. When you consider the homestead deduction, when you consider the over 65, and there may be a couple more deductions that the older person may qualify for, they may pay very little, and some people actually don't pay anything. So we do have that program for anybody that's over 65.
Well, Pastor Green, glad to have you join us on this evening. We've had some great information that Representative Pryor shared with us on tonight. She's actually talked about, as you know, we're talking about property taxes, that the fact that we could be looking at some pretty significant rises, increases in property taxes, and the fact that if your property tax bill is more than 5%, if it's gone up more than 5%, that you can appeal that process. But she's also shared on tonight that, while we're looking at other increases and rises and such things such as utility bills, that things such as referendums, if they get passed, they too would go on top of an increase that would be such if we did have an increase in property taxes. So we're seeing a compounding, if you will, of financial burdens that are happening to our senior citizens and those that have been living in their properties for years. And it's getting to a point, and we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to provide relief, especially to those seniors?
I'm sorry. The last thing that I want to bring up is TIFs, the tax increment financing districts, which generally have a lot of money sitting in those accounts. Though that is money that the redevelopment commissions and the mayors or whomever is allowed to use to put in infrastructure for their projects that they want. Those are tax dollars that do not go to your local schools, that do not go to your local government. So the more money that goes into those TIF accounts, even after the debt is paid off sometimes, that also creates a problem as well. So what I have consistently tried to express to the school districts is that they need to start speaking with these mayors and with those redevelopment commissions and telling them that they need to start sharing part of that money with them, because the more money that they get, that means the more money that the regular taxpayer is going to have to pay in their tax bill. So they need to be helping out those schools just as much as the taxpayers are. And some of them do. Sometimes they give them a little money, but our schools need millions of dollars. They don't need a couple 100,000. They need millions of dollars.
Your
So,
pastor,
Representative Pryor,
go ahead.
yeah, I just want to be clear about what she just stated. So, if we're out in Pike, if the developer's out in Pike doing something, Pike could request monies from it if they were utilizing TIF dollars. Pike school system could request money from the TIF dollars
Mm-hmm.
versus just waiting for the property tax thing, right? Is that what you're saying?
Versus doing a referendum
Right.
or requesting as much in a referendum, you know. So and for me, we do have a TIF in Pike. I don't have any referendums on my tax bill because Pike Schools does not have a referendum, but there is a TIF. I think the FFA has a TIF over north over by Traders Point. So we do at least have one TIF in our area. But it's not like it is in Center Township where IPS is. They are really hurting and struggling.
Okay. But most of the townships are, I mean, we are fortunate that Pike hasn't asked for a referendum, but
Mm-hmm.
many of the townships of, whether it's Washington or et cetera, have, you know, either recently done referendums or discussing it. So I don't think that Pike is going to be an exception to that rule. It's a question of not if, but when. And we would like to,
Absolutely.
I like to delay that. It's good information to know that there are options out there that we may have to
Yeah.
suggest.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, they need the money. You know,
Hmm.
all the costs are going up. We
Right.
heard one school district say that their utility bill went up $1 million. You know, and that's a lot of money. Where are they going to get it from? You know, we have to educate our kids. So it's kind of, a trick bag. The homeowner needs the relief because it's the family of the kid, but the kid needs to be educated and
Yeah.
government needs to function.
Yeah. I just tend to add a third leg to the stool, and that is, we need to be cautious about businesses and the tax breaks that we give them, because the bigger that business
Absolutely.
is, and the bigger property they take over, and they don't pay taxes on it, then that has to get spread out amongst those residents and the children that they got to educate. So, it'd be nice if all three those legs on the stool paid their fair share. But I understand why sometimes that
Absolutely.
don't happen.
And I agree. For years at the legislature, for years we've given tax breaks to businesses, and we've not focused on homeowners. And this year, across the board, across the state, people are feeling the pinch, and which is why I think we'll probably have something this session that happens that will hopefully help homeowners. We had a bill, as a matter of fact, we were listening last week where one of the legislators wanted to increase the business personal property tax deduction, and from 80,000 to $250,000, and I spoke up and said, I'm not comfortable with the legislation because we're talking about um, increasing um, the property tax deduction for businesses, but we haven't done anything to help homeowners. So how can we do something to give business a tax break, but we haven't done anything to give homeowners a tax break? Even with the 1% cap, is with sales just going through the roof and assessments being so high, it's still putting a pinch on people whose salaries have not kept up with the cost of what their home value is.
Well,
I mean,
hopefully,
it's certainly.
Pastor, we can find, even as we're in the campaign season, that maybe our mayoral candidates can even speak to this issue as well and not just leave it up to the state legislators.
Well, yeah, and I certainly agree because my concern is obviously we've got a number of fixed income people. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about seniors, et cetera, or anybody that's in the low income bracket. They may be working.
Mm-hmm.
When you consider that utility prices have all increased, for the most part, they all got their rates approved to give increases. And then you put that with assessments and property taxes are going to be more. And you put that with a possibility of a referendum. I mean, you just can't keep up with all of that, and you're on a fixed income and eat all
Mm-hmm.
those costs, and they keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. People are, I mean, and I feel their pain. We're in the boat of when we gonna catch a break here. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
business side will say, "Well, we're getting ready to go over a cliff." Well, we're getting ready to push people over a cliff.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. And some people have already gone over that cliff.
Right?
And so,
Exactly.
I just want people to be prepared when those tax bills come out. That is very likely that they're going to see an increase, but to also know that they have an opportunity to appeal their assessment and potentially get some relief that way. And if people are over 65, they have an opportunity to apply for an over 65 deduction. We also have a blind and disabled deduction. So if you're blind or disabled, you can get a deduction. If you are in the military, there's a deduction for certain individuals who have served in the military as well. If you live in your home, and I think there are a lot of seniors who have lived in their homes for a long time before we even had a homestead deduction, who may qualify for a homestead deduction. So take advantage of those deductions that are out there because they can significantly decrease your property tax liability as well. If you qualify, there are qualifications that need to be met. So if you qualify, you can be helped. But it doesn't help those of us who don't meet those qualifications, though. And that's generally, those folks who are 65 and less.
Now, if one wants to, if you want to view your property tax bill, you can go ahead and do that. You can just go to indy.gov and you can view your property tax bill. There is a Get Started tab. You just go ahead and hit Get Started and you can click in your property information and it should go ahead and pop up. And Representative Pryor, if I look at that and I find that, hey, I need to go ahead and get this appeals process started, how do I do that?
The appeals is done through the assessor's office, the Marion County assessor's office. But when you get your property tax bill, they will have on that property tax bill how you appeal your assessment. So the property tax bill will have it on there.
And you can also, as we're looking at the cost rising, there's also payment plans that are available for you when it comes to paying your property tax bills. They also have Google Pay, PayPal, other ways in which you can pay your property taxes. So one thing I will say that has happened, a little bit over the years, they're making it a little bit easier. It used to be so difficult to pay those your property taxes. You had to go downtown and do it. Now it's definitely a lot easier to do that. But if anything else, instead of just waiting, for your bill to come in, go ahead and start looking, start searching, start planning, because you don't want to have that sticker shock, if you will. And once again, before we finish on our Radio 1 show, was there anything else you want to share with them before we let them go and we transition in our conversation on tonight, Representative Pryor?
I would just like to add on to what you just stated about making payment arrangements and reaching out to the treasurer's office, because the penalty is to 10%. So if you don't pay your property tax bill on time, there's a 10% penalty, and and it's very difficult to get it off. You can't say I forgot, and that's going to be an excuse, or I was out of town, and that was an excuse. It's pretty difficult to get that 10% off. So it's better to reach out and make arrangements so that you don't have that late fee, because you won't be. It's pretty difficult to, by statute, you can't just erase a penalty if you were late paying your tax bill.
And if it's already going up close to 15%, you're adding another 10%. We're talking about almost 25%.
If you got a 10%, if your tax bill is $3,000 and it's 10%, that's car note for some people.
Well, there we go. Well, thank you, Representative Pryor, for sharing in regards to property taxes. We're going to hold on with Representative Pryor. Pastor Green and I are. We're going to transition our conversation, though. For those that are listening on AM 1310, 92.7, and 95.1 on Radio 1, we want to say good night. You have a great night. We're going to continue our conversation on Facebook. We're going to talk about what's going on in Memphis and that situation there. The homegoing services were happened today for Brother Tyre Nichols, so we're going to be talking about that. But we want to say God bless to all of our Radio 1 listening audience, and we hope that you have a great evening. But you can continue to watch. Just catch us on Facebook. You can go to my page, Tony Alexander. You can catch us there. Be blessed, everyone. Hope you have a great evening. Representative Pryor, Pastor Green, this evening we're getting ready to transition from our Radio 1 show and continue on Facebook as we dive into the conversation as to what happened in Memphis with the death of Tyre Nichols, who was beaten by law enforcement. His homegoing services, his funeral was on today, so that family is just now laying him to rest and still going through that grieving process. We have a nation that has witnessed what has happened. We have a nation that has been impacted and has been actually traumatized, and in a lot of cases from what has been witnessed. Pastor Green, you with Baptist Ministers Alliance has put out a statement. Representative Pryor, you as well have put out a statement, and I kind of want to start there with you all as to just kind of where you stand in regards to the statements that were put out and the family and getting the justice for what has happened to their loved one.
Representative Pryor, you can go first.
Okay. Well, I watched the entirety of the 4 videos, and I was completely appalled at what I saw, and so I did put out a statement. One saying that I was glad that the Memphis Police Department acted swiftly in releasing the videos. I think that all police departments need to do the same. Here in Indianapolis, it seems like, we don't act as swiftly as we should in releasing the videos. I was glad that the officers were charged. I think all of them need to be charged. I'm concerned about the EMS and the EMT people who showed up and didn't help the gentleman immediately. But the other thing that was important to me, and I mentioned in my statement, is that we should move this swiftly regardless of the race of the officers and regardless of the race of the person who was the victim in the incident. So that, I was glad that they moved swiftly. I do, however, question if it would have been moved so as swiftly had the officers not been black.
I echo the sentiments of Representative Pryor. Uh, and I have the same question that had it been 5 white officers, would we even be aware of this as we sit here on this evening? Though, and it was horrific to watch. It's sad. I feel like that while they're trying to pass the George Floyd Act, certainly that would we'd love to see that happen at a federal level. I do believe that given what has transpired in Indianapolis, that we need a level of criminal justice reform as well because of the people that we know that have been, in the last 12 months that have been impacted by police action, violence, whether that's the Herman Whitfield situation, for certainly a young man that was uh, suffering a mental health issue, or the shooting of Anthony Macklin in his grandmother's driveway. We still haven't got that footage, and for the Herman Whitfield thing, it took over a year, I think, to get the footage released. And those things are not helpful for healing and building confidence, in my opinion. The relationship we need between police and community. So I think that the chief there in Memphis, Chief Davis, is to be commended for making bold decisions swiftly. Not that all the decisions were made. I'm sure an investigation is continuing, but she did make some choices that I'm sure went against, quote unquote, the police union there, the FOP. And so she's to be commended for taking a stand to say, okay, she suspended the Scorpion unit, then eventually got rid of it because you can't do everything at once. But she at least was taking steps to be transparent, and I believe that helped with the community to trust her and the process and to have, quote unquote, peaceful protests. I'm not sure that goes down that way if she doesn't make some of the decisions that she made. Like if the footage wasn't really out and some of this stuff begins to leak out, etc., and she hadn't made decisions about the officers. Not that she had them all the decisions made yet, but that boldness, that leadership, she's to be commended.
Well,
Yeah.
especially
I
when,
agree.
as you stated, that the potential for violence that could have happened once the public at large saw the video, if she hadn't did what she did, as well as to the satisfaction of the family, and then the family being able to speak out as well. All of that lends itself to being able to at least waiting to see if the justice system does work the way that you want it to.
Exactly. So I just think we hopefully we learn and we get some significant changes, Representing Pryor, that the George Floyd Act
Hmm.
that really does pass, etc. I think you're gonna see a great frustration in people if we go through all this and nothing happens. So I'm hoping that.
I, I totally agree with you, Pastor Green. I was hoping that something would have gotten passed when George Floyd died, and nothing happened. Um, we have a different Congress, um, unfortunately, and and I can't say that I have confidence in in the leadership in the House to get anything done. And then there were two people in the Senate that held up the bill the last time, and those individuals are still in the Senate. But it's just troubling to me that people can look at the videos and see all the data and all the innocent people who have continued to aren't armed people, a lot of them black, who have continued to be shot and killed by police officers, and the behavior of the police department continues to be the same. um, I think we all support police officers, and but however, the bad police officers should not get a pass, and there shouldn't be cover up, and they shouldn't be allowed to stay on the police force to continue to do bad things to people who are just trying to live their lives and do the right thing.
Well, I think that's where that reform comes in, Pastor Green, is because that reform, if you have true reform, it allows the good, the good guys, if you will, to be able to do that without, thinking about retribution. Because that reform will include that. A lot of times, that's what you're finding. The good cops, and they will be on an island. This situation is different because we're getting a lot of information out a lot sooner than normal, and we're getting a lot of reaction that we're not used to as well from our police unions. So the question is, while we're talking about reform, are we now on a path to that? Because I think while, we talked about George Floyd, I think a lot of our legislators across the country were hoping that was just going to die away. Well, this right here has brought all that back up.
Right, so it will be a struggle. Now, what I'm hoping is the FOP is normally, in this situation, is in a different tone of voice, representing Pride from anything I've seen. And so it causes
I'm
one
sure
to
they
one.
are.
Yeah, because it
Sure
was
they
five
are.
black officers. Would they have the same tone if it was five white officers? Is the thing that is the thing that's the elephant in the room. I just believe in addressing the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the FOP almost justifies every shooting and everything that some police officer does. In this one here, they're on the other side, but it's five black officers. So will they be the same way? Because the reality is we're going to have another police action shooting in 2023 somewhere in the country. And will they take the same stance if it's a different color officer? Will we hear the same tone of voice representing Pryor? Will we hear the same
Or
comments?
or if the victim and the officers were in the reverse, what
Yes.
does that situation look like as well? You know, and and I will say I was so heartbroken to see that whole situation, because at in a span of an hour, um, literally, well, I guess for the officers who had been I guess preying on people in Memphis, um, eventually they probably were gonna do something, but the lives of all of those families and people are now being devastated because of the horrible behavior of that unit. And that is unfortunate. So all of those officers, you know, they're going to be going to jail because of what they did. Hopefully. And now the family of Tyre Nichols. I mean, so because of that, the horrible behavior, all of those families are now going to be affected by it. That is unfortunate. That is unfortunate. But that is the mindset and the mentality and how far too many of how the bad police officers have been acting for years, and the behavior that people have been trying to change for years, but we have not been able to do that.
Well, can we? The question is, once again, we're talking about this reform thing, Pastor. Can we, now that we've had a precedent, if you will, especially locally, we're hearing our own chief speak out. When we have local issues, we're not necessarily hearing that voice as quickly and as strongly. But now we have a precedent that's been set because something has happened, down the street, if you will, in Memphis. Now I say, here's what this community, at least here, should be expecting. And I would say local communities across the nation where you're seeing the same thing happen, where in the past, you're not hearing anything, especially from your local police unions, and a lot of them are speaking out now. Now we have to remind them that if the next incident happens, we want that same swiftness.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. At a minimum, in my opinion, the powers to be in our own city should come together and say, here's what you can expect in a police action shooting. And it needs to be closer, like for the releasing of the footage, to 20 days, as Attorney Crump was sharing on today. It needs to be swift. We want justice, and we want it swiftly, not sitting at months and we don't know, and when we figure it out, we'll decide to share something with you in terms of video. That must be unacceptable. I mean, I do believe that if you're Herman Whitfield, you deserve justice. If you're Anthony Macklin's family, you deserve justice. People deserve justice, and rather than sit around and act like it's never going to happen, embrace what it is, take a look and learn from the Memphis situation, and then communicate to the community, here's where we're going to be at. Because I think the community has every right to say the process, what we've been doing in Indianapolis, does not serve as transparent. It doesn't serve as justice because it's just slow, and it's clearly they're playing the game of, well, we're trying to diffuse it all, let it all, everybody forget about it, and not do justice. And I think we need to, as a people, look at Memphis and say, wait a minute, we're not going to tolerate that right there. Now, you're not going to be proactive and work on something, but understand from the community's perspective, we're not going to continue to accept a year, 18 months, 24 months, whenever you happen to feel like it, you drop it late on a Friday, where you hope nobody sees it in the news. I mean, that needs to stop.
And the one thing about that video that police departments will say, they got to go through the video and obscure certain things, because everything I understand, if it's a child, you don't need to see their faces. There are certain things that people don't need to see. But the Memphis Police Department was able to do that pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So police departments cannot use anymore. We had to go through the video. We had to obscure this. We had to obscure that. You can do it pretty quickly. So the police, and this thing for the Memphis Police Department, now they're going to have to be consistent in doing that every time as well. So they can't just, they released it for this incident. They got to do it for all of the other ones. And for other police departments, it can be done. You can't hide behind, especially if the family and the victim wants those videos to be released. There should be no reason why. It's totally different if you're the victim and you saying, hold up, wait a minute. But if the families and the victims are saying release, then there's no reason why they shouldn't be released.
Well, we also I would say you would want to see undoctored videos as well, videos that are telling the story as it actually is, and not having where the video has been edited to the point to which the truth is not really coming out. And I think we're seeing that too often as well, where especially now in the era of body-worn cameras, that you should be able to get a complete picture. And I would even say, when we look at the Memphis situation and looking at what the initial, I'll say, police reports were, as far as what they told the family, what they told the public, when we're talking about reform, once again, I'd like to see something where when there's incidents that the officers are all separated, you take their statements separately, and you can find out right then on the scene, if there's something that we need to look at from a, leadership perspective, or superior, perspective, if there's something we need to start digging into right now, rather, to down the road when we have more issues.
Yeah, you're right. And you're right. We need those video tapes raw. but we also need them unnarrated, because the challenge that I have when those videos, even if they're raw, if they're narrated, that's painting the picture that someone wants you to see. It's not allowing you to see the video for what it is, because you're hearing in your mind what someone is wanting you to know. And I don't like that either. With Memphis, you just saw the video. Nobody talking. It was completely raw. And that's what people deserve to see. Not somebody else's vision of what the truth is or what they want the truth to be.
Exactly.
When we talk about narration, Pastor, and training, okay, I'm gonna tie these two together:
Okay.
narration and training. We always talk about the lack of training, if you will, with officers. Well, I'm gonna dispel that and say the officers are trained very well, because their narration in what you did hear on the video was they were narrating certain commands when Mr. Nichols was not resisting. They're saying things like, show me your hands. They're saying things like, his hand may be on my weapon. You're hearing things such as turn over, get on the ground. They're giving you a narration, which tells me they are trained extremely well in how to do that. So if they can get that down to a T, because the narration, I fear for my life, or the narration and giving commands to a suspect, if you will, or an encounter with someone, they do that extremely well. And in my opinion, they all get A pluses for that.
Remax, and you're awful funny on this Wednesday night, but yeah, they would get A pluses for that. That unfortunately, having talked to some of the attorneys and others in our city, I mean, I've learned that that's part of the training, that for them to, so what you hear, whether it's Herman Whitfield or you come over here to Tyree situation, they're giving you a command when you're already in the position. So, get on the ground. Well, he was on the ground. You're talking about get on the ground as though he wasn't, because if you take that to the courtroom where normally they only hear the voice side of it, well, then the juror is going to hear, well, yeah, they were telling him to get on the ground. You're going to assume he wasn't on the ground. Or, he wouldn't give him his hand. He was resisting arrest, because the officers are saying this, positioning it for, hey, we got to say this so that they can get a conviction. It just, in God's wisdom and plan, when you have a camera come out, whether it's, George Floyd, etc., then you have to be like, wait a minute, that don't match anymore. But the reason what Representative Pryor is saying is so important is, if you, when they narrate the video, they minimize that where you won't pick that up like they did that with Herman Whitfield. The narrator's coming in telling you something, and you're
Mm-hmm.
missing this piece. Wait a minute. They're telling him to do something he's already on his face down. What are you talking about? Never mind. You've tased people, you pepper sprayed people. I mean, it's normal for some people to move a little bit. They're not telling the piece where they got this. There's three or four police officers on you, and they really got you under control. That part ain't being told. They're talking to you like you're running loose and free, or trying to do this, and so that part you're right, Red Mags, and they've mastered. That's why we have to have criminal justice reform now. We've got to get people in the room and understand this ain't going to continue to work in an age of technology, because you don't know who got a cell phone, who's videotaping something, or somebody's home is picking up something, and this is going to be it can become a huge mess for you if you continue down with those types of practices, because you don't know who's looking. I mean, cameras everywhere now.
They are. And this is another thing that bothers me. In the age where we do have these cell phones, where they have those sky cameras, where police officers have the cam, the dashboard cams and the body cam, the behavior still is the same. It's still the same. And that is just so troubling to me. I think for some officers, it may have deterred some of the bad behavior. But for some of the officers, it's as if they don't care. It's just they don't care.
Well,
And you would think that if you recording me, I'm gonna be on my best. I'm not gonna be on my worst.
I think Representative
But
Pryor that we should be. They got body cams, and I think there's some law against it, but supervisors should be able to look at that stuff and help people. Because I don't even believe this was these five police officers' first rodeo. So they were pretty good at what they were doing, even though it was wrong.
mhm,
So I don't think it was their first time. But I do
yeah,
believe you had supervisors looking in at these body cams saying whether somebody officer happens to always be turning his off when he's engaged or whatever, they should be learning and that should be helping with training to prevent some of this stuff. Because
yeah,
somebody should be looking at it like, hey, you didn't handle that right. And why not
mhm,
have that supervisor help the officers out before you get a mess versus trying to defend it? Because I'm sure every one of these officers, these five officers, are going to say it was our training. Well, I'm not sure they trained you to kick somebody in the face or any of that, but that's going to be their argument. Well, then we should be looking. Why come a supervisor can't look and say, hey, let's just review some of this body cam footage of what happened here, and then adjust it if they're seeing things that don't line up with what the department represents, and catch
yeah,
it beforehand, not after. You're on CNN for some stuff that you really don't want to be on there for.
yeah. And some of those officers had had problems before. They had had complaints, and so obviously that behavior was just let go. And this is what it has, percolated to the situation with Tyre Nichols. Had they been dealt with before, maybe this situation would not have happened. But they just let it go on and on and on. And in the officer's mind, they can get away with it. And some people, I'm sure some people probably did not even file complaints against those police officers. That they're terrorizing folks in those communities.
Right.
And so some people complained, some people didn't. So I think the chief, she did a good job and acted swiftly. But I think the other thing though is she's going to have to be held accountable also for allowing that bad behavior to continue within that police unit in that department as well. Because this was not their first time doing that. Uh, Pastor Alexander was correct. They were just too comfortable doing what they did to him. I mean, you're going to stand the man up and punch him in the face several times. How do do that? That was just an extra level of comfort that they should not have had.
Let
And
me
nobody even said, "Watch this." Did nobody say, "Stop"?
Nobody,
Why'd you do that? And even
nobody
afterwards, they
stopped.
they they act like that was normal and kept on with their conversation.
Yep, they sure did. Even kicking him in the face. It was just, the one officer kicked him so hard he could barely walk around. He was limping.
for a
I,
long time. Well, I'd have to guess that he probably had to seek medical attention by the time the night was over. The way he was walking around, if you watched him. But
yeah,
let me give you
that's
this
true.
because this was from here in Indianapolis, the body worn camera policy that was put in 2020 in regards to what a supervisor could and could not see. It specifically says that supervisors are prohibited from reviewing body worn camera recordings for the sole purpose of searching for violations of department policy not related to a specific complaint or incident. So it says a supervisor can only review recordings if it is a reportable incident, um, to if it's related to an employee's on-duty injury, or if it's to help discipline when there is a complaint of misconduct or the supervisor saw that misconduct. What it doesn't say, well, I guess a complaint would be another officer, but so it has to be a complaint or the supervisor saw it, but there is no arbitrarily we're going to be watching for training purposes. And in regards to training, the only people that can see it is the training academy staff. They can see it, but nobody else can.
But I think that is why people, when they have these unfortunate or inappropriate situations and stops and interactions with police officers, they need to report that. They, there needs to be some reporting, and there needs to be action taken by the Citizens Review Board or whatever board it is, and the chief to discipline those officers who are habitual offenders and terrorizing people. Because if you're doing something over and over again, you're really just terrorizing folks. And I think I think that the police chief it should be easier for them to get rid of bad police officers. If you and I did something wrong, nobody stands up for us and say we should keep our job and continue the bad behavior. With anybody else, they're gone. There's no we're going to put you on administrative duty while you still get paid while we investigate. You're out. And the police officers, they have bad behavior. The fact that they know that they can continue to do this stuff and get away with it, and they do. They do, and they are protected. And we as taxpayers are paying for them to continue to do this and to be protected. And that's crazy.
Reform is necessary. This incident, unfortunately, I'll say I'll take solace from what the mother said. What Brother Nichols' mother said is that his death is going to be for a greater good, and that there will be change because of it. I have to say that for me personally, I appreciate her spirit because it helps keep, I would say, some things in perspective. And I'll say the way they really handled it, in its entirety. We talked about how, early on, some of their comments, could have helped avert, that city being torn down. And that's for real. And I think some of the wisdom that they're sharing, some of the compassion that they're sharing, hopefully that goes a long way, to seeing that change.
Yeah. And the one thing that the officers kept saying, he must have been on something. He must have been on something. He must have been on something. And, there has been nothing that anyone has been able to come up with that show that young man was anything other than a good person. Nothing. A good person, a good father, a great son. Nothing. But the narrative that they wanted to put out there was he was on something. Well, you know what? If I'm fighting for my life, everybody whose adrenaline isn't going to be in full steam. Everybody's. If you are running for your life, you're going to get more energy than what you ever thought that you could ever have. That young man, he was running for his life. Literally. He knew what was going to happen if they had caught him. And unfortunately, it did.
Well,
Exactly.
unfortunately.
unfortunately, yeah, he had already experienced, at their hands as soon as they yanked him out of the car before he ran. So he
Hmm.
had reason to be fearful for his life, quote unquote. Representative Pryor, I want to thank you for hanging out with us and extending the time with us on tonight, talking about, not just property taxes, but this incident as well. Pastor Green, we're looking, hopefully that we can see some reform here in Indianapolis as well through this incident. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll turn it over. If you've got any closing remarks, Representative Pryor, and then we'll turn it over to you, Pastor, so you can go ahead and close this out.
Nope. Just have a blessed night, everybody.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you, Representative Pryor. Thank you, Rem Alexander. We certainly will be in prayer for the city of Memphis and the Nichols family. And thank you all listening audience. God bless.